know, when we hear the story of Hezekiah, we think of a king that was good and did right things in the sight of God. It's wonderful. But his predecessor, which was his own father, Joash, he had ended up nailing shut the doors of the temple. And how it happened was kind of interesting, how it happened gradually. He began to less and less see the need to be there all the time. The Passover could be celebrated less often. And see how it began to work. And how many times in our life do we start out by making something easier, and then we end up nailing shut the very source of our power? And maybe talk about how that sometimes we, for the sake of efficiency, lose our effectiveness. You know, when Hezekiah became king, the first thing he began to do in the first month that he began to reign, the Bible lets us know that he began to reestablish the worship of God. And he took and made it his priority. And you would think, you know, he became a king of a nation. You would think a lot of other things would have taken precedent over that, getting to know the dignitaries, getting to know the other kings, letters needed to write, laws put in place, whatever it might be. But he went to recapture the presence of God. And you know, how many times in our life do we just try to let God fit in instead of making him a true priority? And what is that process where God just becomes part of the fitting in, you know, wherever we can make it work, and then everything else becomes a priority, whether it be a game or something, you know, work related or whatever. But we make sure that we keep those other things priority, and the God thing kind of, you know, fitting in. What is it that causes us to do that, and how can we change it? And in the same story, we see where Sennacherib from Assyria is going to attack Jerusalem. So he sends his armies there, and they have at least 185,000, maybe quite a bit more than that are there to attack Jerusalem. And they send word, tell them what they're going to do to them, and they give them a chance to surrender. And so what Hezekiah does, he takes all the papers with all the threats of the enemy, and he lays it out in front of him. And he begins to cry out to God, and the prayer is just a magnificent prayer. And what I want to point out is the fact that he laid it all out in front of him and laid it out in front of God and said, this cannot be. And how many times do we let just the dailiness of life and the activities that are around us just kind of like override any kind of other thought, and we think, well, we'll accept this the way I feel, we'll accept that situation with our child, and we just start accepting our life instead of actually looking at what the enemy's doing, and basically in this case they had it written out, but basically putting it before God and say, this cannot be. Whatever happened to our prayer where we're saying, this can't happen, this will not exist, I refuse to live like this? Where's that determination, that intentional prayer? And why have we lost it? And why are we just accepting of what's going on and not truly determined to let God be our victory in our life?